A note to listeners, this episode was recorded on the 12th of February 2020, prior to the coronavirus COVID-19 being recognised as a pandemic by the World Health Organization on 11th March 2020. In today's episode, I will be talking to Agostino Pintus about what it's like running on fair. Agostino talks about how he felt that he'd handed his life to corporate and that he never wanted to do that again. Agostino chose real estate as a vehicle to take back control of his life. Listen in to hear the rest of our conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Agostino Pintus. Hi, Agostino. How are you doing?
I am great. How are you doing?
I am really up for it. I'm very looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes,
but before we start, tell me a bit about you.
Well, I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, but I just didn't know it, right? When I was a kid, I was first exposed to computers at a very young age when I was like 9-10 years old. And since that time, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I totally ignored it. And, ended up going to corporate America and doing all that, becoming a CIO, running a large enterprise IT. And then after going through many, many challenges, many failures, working as a corporate person, even at the highest levels, and really turning myself over to a company like that to help build that success, which is what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And then failing miserably because, one day the boss calls you into the office and hands you the box and tells you to get lost. It's, it really is, it could really impact you in a negative way if you really allow it to. And that's exactly what I did. So, but since then I shifted my entire focus and shifted my mindset, really is what it took to really drive to where I'm at today, which is entirely different. I'm still an entrepreneur, but now I'm into real estate and buying big monster deals, which you would have told me 5 years ago I'd be taking down $110 million property. I would never believe you, right? But that's what I'm working on right now. My partner and I are putting a deal like that together. Literally, I was on a call just before this. So,
Fingers crossed for that.
Yeah. But it's the mindset, Judith. That's what it is. It's all between our ears. That's where it all is.
Brilliant. So I understand that yes, you was highly successful being a CIO. But I remember reading somewhere that you're saying that you was really running on fair though every day. What was that like?
Oh, well, that's a thing. I mean, when I first got into real estate about 16 years ago, the primary motivation was because I was living in fear. It was all fear. It was fear-based. So even though I was doing a good job for the company, I was a young CIO. I was in my early 30s, managing a very large budget, managing a great team of people. And I was always worried that, what if I get fired tomorrow? I had no reason to think that I was going to get fired or anything else like that, except for the fact that I've been fired from every single job until that point.
Wow. How come?
Because I've been an entrepreneur, and if for most entrepreneurs, they have a hard time working for people. They just do. I mean, they'll do a good job for maybe a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe even 2 years. But it was tough for me. It was very tough for me. Number one. Number two, I think that when people end up at some very bad companies, and unfortunately, we're not allowed to talk about it. Right. Where if, let's say, for instance, you go work for a crappy company and there's plenty of them out there, and then of course you're let go because one reason or another, the company is terrible. They can't cash flow. They're not run properly, whatever the case may be. You can't exactly go to the next interview and say, yes, I made a bad choice and I worked for this crappy company. You can't really say that either. So I've had a few of those stints myself. But at any rate, the whole premise behind getting into doing what I ended up doing today, the reason why I started was fear-based. If I could buy enough houses, if I could buy enough properties, I can cash flow X hundreds of dollars or a couple $1,000s a month, and that'll protect me in case something happens, which is entirely the wrong way of thinking. It's it's scarcity mindset. And if you get into the scarcity mindset, you will more than likely fail. It was not a mindset of abundance, which is what I'm creating now, right? Which totally different.
That makes sense. So when you was in corporate and you said that, you'd been moved from one job to another under short periods, so I can understand how that would generate that kind of fear. But did it happen often enough for you to think, I need a new game plan here? Or was it a case of, did you feel like it was always going to happen? Do you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, I would say that when I handed my life over to corporate, and again, it may be because I'm wired differently, I'm not sure, but I basically handed my life over to another party, because essentially it's what you're doing. This other party is going to tell you, you need to show up, Judith. You need to show up at this place, at this office at 8 a.m. and you're going to leave at 5 p.m. because someone said 50 years ago or 100 years ago or whatever, that this is the rule. This is the rule you must follow. And it's when you do that kind of stuff, you just fall into a rut. I think is what happens, and this becomes life. You turn your life over. The one life you only get one. This is it, right? We only get once around the ride, and you're spending your days that you can never relive, showing up 5 days a week, doing this, playing the same game over and over and over again. And when you turn your life over like that to someone else, you better hope that, and that's all you have, you better hope that they don't end up burning you or really taking that job away from you, right?
Yeah, you know what? You really grabbed my attention when you said handing your life to corporate. And you know what? You really kind of managed to sum it all up in one sentence. That whole feeling that I get when I see people in commute time. It's that kind of... I don't know if it's drudgery, but it's that kind of, no one's happy. No one's happy on the train to London. Do you know what I mean? You look around, because when you work for yourself, you can choose the times that you work. So generally I tend to avoid rush hour. Right. There are times when you can't. So you're in rush hour and you're like, because it's something you don't do all the time, you're like, you're quite kind of chirpy, because it's just and then you look around and everyone's just dead-eyed. Do you know what I mean? Completely dead-eyed. Even when they're watching something on their phones, they're still dead-eyed watching it. There's no animation there. And then when you get to the Friday, everyone's really excited, talk about the weekend. And you just think, if you could take that excitement that you feel at 4:30 for the rest of the week, life would be pretty good. And I think one of the reasons I think that I do a lot of leadership work is because I recognise that thing that, as you've put it so well, that people hand their lives to corporate and corporate aren't taking care of them. So it's like people have trusted their entire life, and most people these days spend most of their day in work. whether that's work at home or train or whatever, but in that workspace. And yet corporate is not handling it well, is it? Let's say they're burning you up and throwing you out.
Yeah.
So tragic. It's really disheartening.
That's the thing though too. I think what many people underestimate is that, for number one, we get one life. You know, when you lay in bed, when you get ready for bed tonight, you're going to think, hopefully you think back of, how did you spend your day today? What did I do today that helped me move the needle to get me closer to that goal, right? Because you can never, ever, ever relive that life. Doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how it doesn't matter what happened that day. You can never, ever, ever get back the time that you just spent that day. And whether it's working for yourself or doing the corporate thing. And number two, I don't hate corporate.
No,
it's more along the lines of, there's this trust that, like I said, someone's just going to take care of me, or someone's until one day they don't, right? Until one day your boss walks up to you and hands you the box and say, pack up your stuff and get lost, or you're done here. Well, why is that?
That sounds so harsh. It's not quite as harsh in the UK.
Oh yeah, over here, no. It's, well, you know, it could be pretty harsh like that.
Wow, I can't imagine what that must be like.
But you know, Judith, I'll tell you what though. I read this somewhere that losing your job is almost as traumatic, if not more traumatic, than going through a divorce or going through a breakup, right? And imagine that's kind of the reason why people don't want to get fired, right? Because they don't want to go through that breakup, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes a good kick in the teeth is what you need to really get people moving and get them motivated. You know, that's really what it is. And that's what it took for me anyway. It took me a couple of getting beat up and getting my teeth knocked in before I realized, you know what? I am not doing this anymore. I refuse to put my life in the hands of some stranger that doesn't give 2 iotas about me. I refuse. I'm done. I quit doing this. I'm getting off the train.
Yeah. Because the thing is, if people say that it's safer in corporate, but it's not if it means that you are giving away your creativity and your passion. Because there's so many people who are doing a job because it's a job, but not because they love doing that job.
Yep. That's right. And the thing is, though, and just like you said, I mean, some people love their jobs, and that's okay. That's cool. You know, as long as if you're happy doing what you're doing, that's super. You know, for me, I think that the big shift occurred when I made a decision that I needed to build something that will outlive me. And I could never do that ever if I'm doing the corporate thing. I just won't be able to do it. And the only way to do it is to go all in, burn the ships and go all in. That's exactly what I've been doing. I trained myself up. Like I said, I'm attacking this one deal right now. It's ginormous. Like I said, it's going to be $110 million historic property in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. And I can't really disclose too much about it yet. Maybe next time I'm on the show, I can tell you all about it. It's going to be a massive project, but keep in mind that, 24 months ago, I started the journey, so most people can't even take down one deal, let alone take down 12 that I've been in since I started all this. And, but it took a massive amount of hustle, making the decision to execute, and really keeping that why in focus, and my why right now, like I said, is to build something that is so big that it'll outlive me, something that's so big that I can hand off to my son, and he can hand off to his kids down the line, and his kids will know my name. That's how big I want this thing to be.
Wow, so that will be pretty amazing. So how did you get there? Was it the being sacked that last time that made you go, right, that's it, I'm sorting my life out? Or was it something else?
No, it was that last time. I was working with a group out of Indianapolis. I met this great guy. He was a president of the company. This is shortly after moving to New York City, where I was living, and he happened to live in New York City as well. And I went through a lot of rough stuff when I was living there too, and that's a whole other discussion. But at one point, I was ready to go and move on from New York. It's a good place to stay for a short amount of time. you know. And but I met this gentleman, and he needed a CIO for the company he was working with, and he asked me to come on board, and I did. And I transformed that company. They had some serious technology issues and personnel issues, and I helped organize that and fix it all up and made them productive again. I mean, for an IT company, they went through a lot of problems. But then, fast forward a couple of years, we see some success there, but regardless, there's some execution issues on the sales side, and he decides he's going to leave the company. The new guy comes in, who for whatever reason, doesn't like me, doesn't like anything that we've done, wants to change the name of the company. I mean, he was whole different mindset this guy had.
That's quite a radical thing to do, isn't it? The company CEO.
Oh yeah, and but what's most important though here is that whenever a new C-level executive or CEO comes in or president comes in, they typically want to replace the whole management team with their people, right? And that's the thing about being at the C-level, is that you're vulnerable to such things. And this was no exception. So again, I'm in my 40s, get bounced out, hand me the box, great. So now here I go again in my 40s dealing with this. This is when it becomes. I mean, it was unacceptable in my 30s. Why would it be acceptable now, right? And I'm like, I can't do this anymore, and I refuse to do it. I mean, I'm done. I put myself in this situation. I have my family that relies on me, and clearly, what am I going to do? Am I going to do this at 55 now? Am I going to take on another job, not living my potential? Really? Is that the best I can do? Or can I do more? Right? That's the key, right? What is the best? And if the best I could do is going to go, crank out 40 hours a week being at some place I don't want to be, then that's terrible, in my opinion.
Yeah. So how did you know that you weren't living up to your potential? Was it a feeling, or did you always knew there was more inside you?
No, yeah. You know what? It was one of those things that up until that point, when I was working for this company, I'm thinking I got lazy. It's part of the problem. I was making very good money. I was living in a nice place, going out every other night, having fun with friends, doing all that stuff. It was a very relaxing life from that perspective, right? But it wasn't until they handed me the box to get lost, right? Yeah. So I left Indianapolis, went to Michigan, started selling off some properties I had there, went to Virginia, started selling off properties there, thinking, okay, what am I going to do next? I need to take control of my life. I need to live my potential. What am I going to do? And then I thought, real estate. I've been doing real estate for 16 years, but I wasn't really trying. It was just like it was a thing that I would add on as I go, not a big deal. I wasn't really focused on it, right?
Right, yeah.
But one thing is for certain is that real estate, despite all the problems I had in my life up to that point, that real estate was always kicking off some money. Every month I get a check, right? Every month something would happen. I'm like, that's the key. If I can build that up
on this, then I might make more money.
Right. But it's funny how things come around full circle, right? But what's most important though is I think where it failed the first time, it didn't fail the second time, is that I didn't go all in the first time. There's fear was ruling my life. Remember, fear is what kept me there, right? But now, having been through all the crap that I've been through over the 16-year period, and I've been through a lot of stuff. That's a whole show.
I've been through a lot. You keep teasing me with that. You don't tell me, but you're a big tease.
It was pretty bad, right? Some of it was pretty bad, but up until that point, once you go through, once it gets so bad,
yeah,
that you start questioning your own existence. When things start getting that bad, and you survive it, you realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. And I think, and that's what had to overcome, because what stops many people from actually taking that step is fear. They're afraid, oh my God, what if this doesn't work? But then, like I said, though, you realize that it didn't work out. I had some real bad problems, but I'm still alive. So there's another chance. There's another chance for me. And that's exactly what I did. And I made a decision. I was speaking to a friend of mine. He told me about how to syndicate a deal, how to syndicate a multifamily property. And he explained how you're able to apply leverage to buy a property. And here in the States, it's very different. I'll explain that in a second. Once he explained it, how it all worked, I'm like, I could do that. I mean, that's I can raise money from people, and I can, that's the thing though too. I had never done it to that scale before for that purpose, but I committed to doing it. So here in the States, you're able to buy multifamily properties. Like you're thinking, think of like 100 units in an apartment building, right? Or plus,
right, okay,
or bigger, right? And which is very different than the UK. You're able to apply a high degree of leverage here. So the one deal that we just closed in December is 148 units, and it's interest-only loan for 2 years. My rate is 3.87%. I mean, you can't do that. Yeah, you can't.
That's amazing.
And that's the thing though too. In the States, you can do that kind of stuff. Like I'm from Canada originally. I can't do that in Canada. There's no way. In other countries, it's not possible. This is the only place you can actually do that kind of stuff. Yeah. But just like I said though, as soon as you understand that, the light went on. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to take on a consulting role to figure out where I'm going to end up next, and just do consulting, get some cash flow, and then I'm going to quit that and just go all in. And that's exactly what I did. I went all in.
Wow.
That's what I do today. And now it's not fear that drives me. It's abundance. It's what's next. How big can we get this thing? So it's a whole different mindset. I mean, and I went to some really dark places before. I am never going there again.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when these things happen to you, these dark places that you're alluding to, it does make you realize, what, I can be more than this. I can do this. But it does take a certain mindset. Did you have a lot of people trying to tell you that you were wrong?
Well, it's funny. My dad, when I first told my father that I'm working on a property, when it was my first quote bigger deal was over $1 million, right? It was a $1.6 million deal, and I negotiated it down to 1.4 million, my first large deal, right? And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's over $1 million. Oh wow, now nowadays that's a renovation budget. It's funny how that works out. But when I first told my dad, he didn't believe me. He thought I was kidding. So my parents had no idea. My mother actually said, and I love my mother very much. She said, "Oh, money is the root of all evil," and it's almost. But it's funny how that works out, right? It's usually the parents that plant these seeds in our head.
Yeah.
And my parents were not wealthy; they're immigrants from Italy, So it's like if you say that you hate money and money is the root of all evil, guess what's going to happen to you? You're not going to have any.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what happened to us as kids, because we were told. We were told that money's the root of all evil. We hate money, blah, blah, blah. They didn't say we hate money, but we'll say money, the rich people are bad. Money doesn't grow on trees, all these different things that you're basically repelling money as opposed to pulling it towards you, right? When you have an abundance mindset. Mm. And anyway, so, my parents, God bless them. They're great. They're great people. But fortunately, their influence is not that much on me anymore. So, but you know what though? It's funny because I ended up changing my whole friend set, if you will. So the friends that I used to hang out with in the past, I don't really hang out with them anymore. My friends today are. I've upgraded my. Sorry, sounds bad to say. I've upgraded my friends. These are all people that have thousands of units, billions of dollars in assets, and it's. I think I'm sure you know the old saying: if you hang around with five, what is it? You're the product of your five closest friends.
Yeah.
So that is 100% true. 100%.
I think it's similar to when you're in corporate life and then you start running your own business, the people you hang around with change, because your friends, unless you're very, very close friends, but the people that you were friendly with in your last job, for example, don't understand the swings and roundabouts that come with working for yourself. So they're like, oh, so it's great for you because you can go shopping in the day. And it's like, well, if I don't work, I'm not going to eat those. It's great for you, so you can afford to be sick, and I can't. It's that kind of thing, and sometimes it can provide a wedge because people can't understand that you can't maybe plan ahead. I can't plan to go on holiday with you next month because I don't know if we'll have the money next month, or whatever it happens to be, and they don't necessarily they think it's them rather than the fact of circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. It's the one thing that you do get though when you're working for yourself, when you're building your own vision, is that you have a high degree of freedom, and freedom is not just having money; it's also having time. And I mean, back in December, I went to Colombia for 6 weeks. December, part of January, because I can't stand the winter, and it gets really cold here in the Midwest. So, went out there with my wife, and it's like I can do that kind of stuff there. I can operate my business from there. I don't have to be here to do it.
Yeah.
If I were working for someone, I would never be able to do it. I would never be able to pull that off. Yeah, I would never be able to pull that off. But I think, getting back to that who you surround yourself with, it's funny because every once in a while, I will still talk to friends that are still doing the corporate thing, and they are still living in corporate. So when I used to live inside the corporate realm, we would talk about the 40 hours and 2 weeks off and where we're going to go on vacation and all that fun stuff. And I've been away from it for so long now that when I go in and see them, I hear all the conversations. I'm like, guys, you don't have to do this anymore, right? This is, there's a whole other world out there, but people don't realize that. They don't realize that if you just burn the ships and live to your potential, there's a whole life, a rich life waiting for you. And it's just hard. It's hard for people to figure that out, though. I think that's the key. It's just hard for people to figure that out.
Yeah. What sort of tips would you give people to get over the fear of leaving corporate life, leaving the nest, as it were?
They have to believe in themselves. And I'm not saying not like, this isn't some hocus pocus thing where you just stare in them, look in the mirror and stare into your eyes and say, I'm worthy of this. That's one thing. Yeah. I mean, that's something, of course, right? But actually believing it by writing. So for instance, I write out my affirmations every day. I write out what my future is today. I write it out as if it's already happening, right? It sounds like a load of crap, but I promise you that stuff works. I promise all your listeners that stuff works. If you're religious and diligent about it, it will work. I journal every day. I have a vision board that I see every day. And what it's doing is it's pulling that future towards me, right? Yeah. And I have full belief and faith in that vision. 100%. I am 100% in. That's the key, right? Where people, and I did the same thing, I would have a backup plan. Well, if this doesn't work out, then I'm just going to go back and do the job thing. I don't have a choice. I am not doing the job thing. It will never happen again. I already decided that. I made a decision. I cut myself off from that. That's not even an option. And when you realize it's not an option, you'd be surprised what you can do. You'll be surprised. You will be surprised. Yeah.
Because you've got to eat, all right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know what, hey, Judith, listen, that first deal I did, that was over $1 million, right? And I just happened to see it. It was on a website somewhere. And the property manager that was already managing some small units for me, he happened to be selling this property. So I was practicing running my numbers. And by that, like what I'll do is I will test deals, right? And it's really help me practice so I know my market, right? So what I'll do is I get a deal, I put it in my calculator, I see how it could project and how it could perform. And you typically do like 100 of those tests before you find one deal that may actually work. So this deal would just happen to be up on my screen, and I spoke to the property manager who happened to be selling this deal. And I said, Gary, what's going on with this deal? And he said, just fell out of contract an hour ago. He told me like 1.4 million. I said, great, send over a purchase agreement. I'm signing it right now. That's exactly what I said. I did not even look at the property, Judith. I just committed immediately. I don't recommend people do that. Don't do that. Right. But I committed immediately. I signed it up and sent it in. Now, the next question was, I was in shock for a second because I'm like, oh my God, I got to go raise $500,000.
So that was a very maverick thing to do.
Yes. But I decided that this is the deal. I need to get this done. And that is exactly what I did. I made, you know how many phone calls I made?
Yeah, a whole ton of them.
Judith, I made 2 phone calls.
You're joking me.
I made 2 phone calls.
Wow.
I called one lady. She gave me she didn't even give me an explanation. She just said, no. And then that's it. Didn't even say hello. Just said no. I'm like, wow, okay. And the second lady, I spoke to her and I told her that the terms of the deal, told her what it were, how it was going to all work out, how much it was, yada, yada, yada. I sold her on the deal and we partnered on it and we took it down. And I mean, there's a whole funny story around all that too. A lot of learning lessons with that one. But the point is we got it done. You know?
So how does it work? Because I'm very much aware that it's quite a different thing to when we have estate agents. So you went out and you saw a property that you knew you could make money on.
Yes.
So you buy the property, and then you find someone that you can help sell the property. Is that how it works?
No. So it's kind of like this. So in here in the States, which is very different than like in the UK, Colombia, like different places that I'm aware of, right? You don't, they're not condos. So when we go buy the 148 unit property, for instance, I own, or my partners and I own the entire property. We own the units inside the property. The people that are living there only rent the units. So every month,
you're like landlords.
Yeah, exactly. So every month they're sending us a check, right, to live there. And what we do before we get into the deal, before we actually buy the asset, is we're doing the math. We're seeing, okay, if we raise X amount of money, we give equity to the investors, and we keep equity. They get equity. We give them a return on their investment, and because they have equity in the deal, when we go to refinance, this is another great thing about this business here, is that, let's say, for instance, I bought this property for $4 million, right? We increase value by driving rents up. We make improvements. Maybe we get rid of some of the bad apples, bring in some great tenants. We do all that and drive revenue. That driving of revenue increases the overall valuation. So in one property we're doing right now, we bought it for, all in for $4.5 million. We're refining it right now. It's going to refi for $6.5 million. So we created $2 million of value in this property in 1 year, right? By driving rents up, by getting rid of some of the bad apples, by stabilizing the income, and by cutting expenses, right? Getting rid of some. They had the previous owners just had a bunch of other expenses that were not necessary. So what the bank does, they go in and then they'll say, you know what, we like what you're doing here. We'll give you the difference. We'll give you, so if you're doing 80%, 80% loan to value, they're going to give us 1.5 million back.
Right.
So then we just take that money, we give some of that money back to the investors. And then of course we get paid, and that's it. That's how we get paid. I don't get a paycheck. That's how I'd get paid. I take down deals and we make them perform. that's what we do.
Okay, that is quite different then.
Yeah, it's very, very different. It's in places like Colombia, for instance. I know that market because my wife is from there. But in Colombia, it's different in that I think it's similar to the UK, where you're buying the actual unit in a building, right? That doesn't necessarily work here. Now, I think, but I do know that in the UK you are able to have like to rent places, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just works differently over there. Money's more expensive for sure. Money's way more expensive over there.
So it is, in a way, though, it is a mindset, isn't it, in terms of how you see what the opportunities are? Because I mean, for most people, when we would say made redundant, so you're saying given the cardboard box, it's like the worst thing that could happen, and you've taken that and gone, you know what, this should never happen again because I'm going to be the only boss that I work for.
Yeah. I made a decision. I mean, that's I wish there were an easier way to say it. It's like, no, I do coaching. I do personal coaching to help people get into deals. And the very first thing we do is discuss the mindset, and try to get them out of the mindset that they're currently in about, oh, can I buy a duplex? Which is fine. If you want to buy a duplex, that's okay. But why not go bigger? If it's because the zeros scaring you, what's scaring you, right? I mean, if that's all that's scaring you, zero is nothing. So nothing should be scaring you right about now. What it comes down to is your ability to get the knowledge and apply it. Because that's why people are afraid, right? When people experience fear, it's because they don't understand they don't have the knowledge. They don't understand what the outcome could possibly be. But once you have the knowledge, then you're no longer afraid.
Yeah. So what tips would you give people?
If they're experiencing fear right now, I would say take a step back and document what life needs to be for you, right? If you had no limits, if there were no limits, you could do anything, you could be anywhere, you can do anything, what would that be? Mm-hmm. And start writing, right? If let's say, for instance, you want to have a home in Central America overlooking the beach, you picture it in your mind, you picture it for real, and then you write it down. I have a beautiful home on the beach. Right. And by making all these things real in your mind and documenting it, that's the first step to making it real, because people seem to believe that whatever's going on around us, this is life right now. But this is only life because we created it like this, right? We're floating. We're just floating right now. Most people are just floating through life, going from job to job, place to place, and that's it, as opposed to living on purpose. And when people start taking control and living on purpose, deciding what their life is going to be by thinking about it up front, and then start working towards it, that's how you make life. That's how you build a life. That's the difference. And most people underestimate what we're capable of doing. One other aspect is that when you do write it down, your reticular activating system activates, right, inside of our brains. And so basically what that is that, was there ever a car or something that you wanted when you're like, say for instance, you really wanted a Volkswagen Bug for whatever reason, and next thing you know, you start seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the reticular activating system doing that. It's, for me, it's like I want. I pre-ordered a Tesla Cybertruck. Now I see Teslas all over the place. It's like up until that point, I didn't even think about getting that car, and now I see them everywhere, because now I write it down every day. I said my Tesla Cybertruck rolls up to my new home. I write it down every day. I'm writing it down, and that's now I'm seeing them. Now I see Teslas everywhere. And that stuff works. It works for real.
I'm going to have to stop. You're the second person who gave a very convincing argument for that, so I might have to start doing affirmations.
Yes, and that's the key though, right there, is that when you start writing the affirmations and really believing in them, that's the key. You got to believe, right? You got to believe that's true. And because if they don't believe that's true, it'll never happen. And but if they do, that's the first step right there. That's it. Everything that we see around us right now, the people we hang out with, the clothes we're wearing, all of the home that we're living in, it's all a reflection of the choices that we have made and the life that we have built. And if we don't like it, it's time to change it. That's what needs to happen.
Brilliant. I think that's a fantastic place to stop, actually. That sounds really good. So would you come back again and do another subject at some point?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can tell me how you got on with that deal.
Yeah, well, we're going to be closing. I think we should be done in middle of May. Wow. So yeah, well, I shouldn't say done. The deal will be closed, and I'll be able to talk at length about the asset, because I'll tell you, it's just unbelievable. It's crazy. It's a crazy deal. It's crazy.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Agostino as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com. or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.